Breaking news, the United States now claiming to have proof, photos and video of Iran's involvement in attacks on 2 oil tankers. We're told the video is of an Iranian Navy boat removing a mine from one of the ships. Alex Marquardt is out front.
It was early morning in one of the world's busiest shipping lanes when the blast went off. Flames pouring out the side of one of the tankers. The United States quickly accusing Iran of the attacks.
This assessment is based on intelligence, the weapons used, the level of expertise needed to execute the operation, recent similar Iranian attacks on shipping, and the fact that no proxy group operating in the area has the resources and proficiency to act with such a high degree of sophistication.
According to U.S. officials, aerial video taken by an American aircraft shows what one official described as an Iranian boat alongside one of the tankers, with someone on board trying to retrieve an unexploded mine. CNN has not seen the video. The 5 blasts on the 2 oil tankers near the Strait of Hormuz hit around the waterline, close to the engine rooms, as they were under sail. So-called limpet mines attached to the hulls are suspected of causing the explosions after the responding crew on the USS Bainbridge, according to a U.S. military official, saw an unexploded mine in the water.
It's unacceptable for any party to attack commercial shipping. And today's attacks on ships in the Gulf of Oman raise very serious concerns.
The crews evacuated the ships. The Bainbridge rescued the 21-person crew on the Japanese-owned Kukuka Courageous. One was injured. Thankfully, no one was hurt on the other tanker, the Front Altair, owned by a Norwegian company. That crew was picked up by another ship, then transferred to Iran, where they still are. The attacks came as Japan's prime minister was meeting with Iran's supreme leader. Iran's foreign minister tweeting, quote, "Suspicious doesn't begin to describe what likely transpired this morning." Secretary of State Mike Pompeo fired back.
This is only the latest in a series of attacks instigated by the Islamic Republic of Iran and its surrogates against American and allied interests. And they should be understood in the context of 40 years of unprovoked aggression against freedom-loving nations.
He offered no evidence, but pointed to a long list of alleged attacks by Iran, including those a month ago on 4 other tankers off the coast of the United Arab Emirates, and argued that it's Iran lashing out in response to the American maximum pressure campaign.
It at least appears to me that it's trying to send a message that if you apply maximum pressure, in the words of the Trump administration, to Iran, that they're going to strike back in some way.
U.S. officials tell CNN tonight that they believe that Iranian boat retrieving the unexploded mine was Iran trying to cover its tracks. Now, we know that more Iranian boats have entered that area. The U.S. is also sending ships of its own, including a destroyer. Aaron, today's attacks and the Trump administration immediately blaming Iran, of course, only raises the possibility of some sort of dangerous escalation. Aaron.
All right. Thank you very much, Alex.
Tensions on the rise in the Persian Gulf once again. The United States says Iran is behind attacks on oil tankers in the Gulf. Now, lawmakers say the Trump administration says it already has the legal authority to begin a war with Iran. Trace Gallagher has been on this all day and joins us tonight. Hey, Trace.
Hey, Tucker, just before dawn today, a Norwegian oil tanker filled with a petroleum product bound for Taiwan radioed for help, saying it had been attacked. Minutes later, a Japanese tanker filled with oil bound for Singapore also radioed for help. At the time, both ships were in the Gulf of Oman, 25 miles off the southern coast of Iran. The U.S. Navy responded to both emergency calls and evacuated a total of 44 crew members. There were no fatalities. And senior U.S. officials now reportedly say the U.S. has a picture of an unexploded mine near the side of one of the tankers. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says based on intelligence, the type of weapons used, and the expertise needed to execute the operation, Iran is responsible. Watch.
These unprovoked attacks present a clear threat to international peace and security, a blatant assault on the freedom of navigation, and an unacceptable campaign of escalating tension by Iran.
U.S. officials also suggest that at least one of the attacks was conducted using a mine similar to one used against oil tankers off the United Arab Emirates last month. Iran just moments ago released a statement categorically denying any involvement and now says it will help secure maritime passageway. The U.S. is also considering military escorts through the very important and very much used Strait of Hormuz corridor. It's also notable that at the time the Japanese tanker was attacked, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe was in Tehran meeting with Ayatollah Khamenei. Tucker.
Interesting. A lot going on. Trace Gallagher, thank you. Mark Hanna is a research fellow at the Eurasia Group Foundation and joins us today. Mark, thanks a lot for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
So a lot of this is confusing. It's hard to know exactly, obviously, what's going on in the Persian Gulf, who would be responsible for these attacks. But the broad outlines are clear. There are people in Washington, quite a large faction in our foreign policy establishment, that would very much like to see a conflict between the United States and Iran. Absolutely. You all have done a lot of polling on what the public wants and thinks about this. Tell us what you found.
Sure. So at the Eurasia Group Foundation, we conducted a poll called Worlds Apart, American Public Opinion and U.S. Foreign Policy. And we asked a question about Iran. If you remember, back in last May, when President Trump withdrew from the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal, we asked the American public if they were to get back on track with the nuclear weapons program, what kind of response would be warranted. You're not going to be surprised to hear 80% chose some sort of diplomatic remedy, some diplomatic solution. But what you might be surprised is actually a majority of both Republicans and Democrats of the remaining 20% thought that Iran had the right to have nuclear weapons to defend itself. More said that than that we should launch some sort of preventive war or preventive attack or strike on Iran. So the American public wants no piece of war. I think what we're seeing here is Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and John Bolton, frankly, the National Security Advisor, whispering in the president's ear, serving their own agenda, not necessarily his agenda. I think the president's instincts here are correct. He's been restrained in this. He wants to negotiate a better deal for Iran. I don't think he wants to go to a war. He knows how catastrophic that would be for American lives, for American treasure, for American prosperity, and it's not worth two oil tankers, a Japanese and a Norwegian oil tanker, aren't worth getting quagmired in another war in the Middle East.
So this is one of those topics, foreign policy more broadly, war in the Middle East specifically, that proceeds really with no reference at all to what the public wants. That's not how a democracy is supposed to operate, is it?
Not at all. The elected representatives and people who conduct foreign policy on behalf of the American people, on behalf of their constituents, should respect and engage with the popular will, should engage with what people want. And what we found is on a number of issues, the American people want a more restrained U.S. foreign policy. And they're not getting that from the kind of neoconservative hawks that want to flex American military muscles every time there's a skirmish somewhere in the world, and liberal interventionists who want to parachute in and promote democracy at the tip of a rifle. The foreign policy establishment inside the Beltway is largely out of touch with the American people. This is what we found in our report that you can read on our website, egfound.org. And it's a problem that needs to be addressed.
Well, they seem to have no interest at all in what the public wants, at all. I mean, the poll that I read that you all did, and maybe you're talking about a different one, I think it was 8% wanted a preemptive attack on Iran.
That's right, yeah. 80% want diplomatic action, 8% want a preventive attack, and there are 12% of people who think that Iran, we shouldn't intervene at all, we shouldn't even do economic sanctions because Iran has the right to have nuclear weapons as a deterrent. So this president, you said this time last year on your show that a war with Iran would destroy the Trump presidency. I agree wholeheartedly with you. I think it would be a disaster for him.
Yeah, he's not being well served by those running, particularly, I would say, by John Bolton.
Absolutely.
Mark, thanks very much for coming on tonight.
Thanks, Tucker. Good to see you.
Thank you.